Interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, happy Friday to you. It's 6 o'clock, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co.
Elon Musk needs to be stopped.
Well, that's Humza Yousaf. He also went on to describe Elon Musk as the most dangerous man in the world. Musk's tweets are also being monitored by UK counter-terrorism. Is all of this a bit of an overreaction or not? And much of America has been and still is on fire. I can't help but notice, though, the amount of people who don't seem to have much sympathy is staggering. Do you have any or not? And the 14-year-old who was killed at the start of this week was known as Gripper and was apparently involved with gang members. His killer is still on the loose. We need to talk about Gangland Britain. And Donald Trump has been spared prison, a fine, or much else, really. Some people are delighted by that, others are furious. What says you? All of that and lots more to discuss tonight. My panel joining me till 7, Charlie Downs, the political commentator, and Judita De Silva, the broadcaster and commentator. Before we get stuck in, though, let's cross live for the 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. President-elect Donald Trump has been handed an unconditional discharge in the Stormy Daniels hush money case, meaning he won't go to jail or face a fine. It comes just days before the 78-year-old is due to be inaugurated as US President for the second time on the 20th of January. Explaining his decision, Judge Merchan said the protections afforded to the office of the president are a factor that overrides all others. Meanwhile, Trump said this has been a terrible experience and he is totally innocent. A nighttime curfew has been imposed in the fire-hit areas of LA as police warn that anyone involved in despicable looting will be arrested. At least 10 people have died in the wildfires tearing through the region, with high winds threatening to spread the flames further. 5 fires are still burning and a man has been detained, but authorities say there's no conclusive proof they were started deliberately. Officials warn the death toll could rise as it's been too dangerous to access some of the worst hit areas. Tractors are taking over UK roads as British farmers protest Labour's family farm inheritance tax. Today marked the final day of the 3 consecutive demonstrations, timed to coincide with the Oxford Farming Conference yesterday. Environment Secretary Steve Reed apologised to farmers in his speech at the conference, but gave no indication the policy would be reversed. Now, the owner of British Gas has warned UK gas stores have fallen to concerningly low levels amid freezing cold temperatures. Centrica says the UK now has less than a week's worth of demand for gas in store. The country's largest gas store site said it could be down to plunging temperatures driving up demand, adding that the need to replenish stocks could lead to rising prices ahead. A spokesman for the Prime Minister insisted that the UK had enough natural gas supplies to make it through the winter and said reports that Britain had come close to blackouts were not true. In other news, officials are monitoring Elon Musk's social media posts for potential security risks, according to reports. The Home Office's Homeland Security team began the scrutiny after Musk's controversial comments about Labour's Jess Phillips, calling her a rape genocide apologist. Phillips, who has long campaigned against violence towards women, says threats against her have increased since the post. Meanwhile, Musk has criticised the UK government for rejecting a fresh inquiry into grooming gangs, sparking heated political debate. The Home Office has not yet commented on the monitoring claims. And Britain shivered through its coldest night this winter, with temperatures plunging to -14 degrees in Scotland. Rail services are severely affected, with ice preventing trains from running at London Charing Cross and delays reported across Northern Merseyside Rail, ScotRail and Great Western Railway networks. And forecasters say it could get even colder tonight, with temperatures in the northeast potentially dropping to -16 degrees. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Sophia. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got Charlie Downs, the political commentator, and Judita De Silva, the broadcaster and commentator. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. Janet, a GB News member, thanks for that, Janet. You've got in touch and said, where's Paul Embry? It's Friday. Have you fallen out with him, Michelle? No, Janet, I've not fallen out with him. I'm such a mild-mannered, non-controversial figure. I never fall out with anyone. He's off, I think, working on his suntan. Needs to colour, get a bit of colour into his cheeks, I think. So he'll be back in a few weeks. Worry not, I definitely haven't had a fallout. You know the drill. There's much we need to discuss tonight, and you can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to Twitter or X, or of course you can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay. You can talk to me and to each other. What a treat. Look, I do just want to touch on Donald Trump, though. Of course, you've just been hearing in the headlines there, he's not going to prison. Some people absolutely delighted by that. Other people absolutely devastated. Where are you, Charlie Downs?
Well, I think that the kind of political persecution of Donald Trump is, well, it is political in nature. I think America has a thoroughly politicised judiciary, and I think a large part of the reason that he was being pursued in the way that he has been over the last 4 or so years is entirely down to the fear that the American permanent ruling class, the establishment in that country, has of him. And so, broadly speaking, I think that it's good that he's been, cleared of these charges. But that's not to say that Donald Trump is not a man with, potentially a bit of a seedy past. But, broadly speaking, I think this is good.
A man with potentially a bit of a seedy past. Blimey, that could be many men out there, couldn't it? Judita Silva, where are you?
I think it's kind of remarkable how things have panned out, that even with him saying that he's gotten off with all the things that could have been really detrimental, but there's a guilty verdict on his record, he's going to appeal that. But I think it speaks to the kind of impression that historically people had about the corruption within the political system in America. He has consolidated so much power that he could override accountability for things he actually did. So, I mean, it doesn't really help to untarnish the record of the way America runs politics and how its tentacles bleed into the judiciary. But he's a lucky man and he's got 10 days to become president and he gets to do it on a clean slate.
Oh, you've all got to admit that whatever you think, 2025 is going to be a whole lot more exciting, isn't it? I mean, can you imagine the stuff that we're going to be talking about over the next few years with Donald Trump at the helm? Penny says, Michelle, it's simple in her mind. She says the whole thing has been a witch hunt. And you say they're going to get bored. You're suggesting they're going to get bored of Donald Trump and focus their attention on Elon Musk. We'll be talking about him before the end of the programme, worry not. But do you remember a few days ago I started this programme with that story, that awful story of the 14-year-old that was stabbed in the middle of the afternoon on the bus in London? Well, his killer still remains on the loose. A manhunt is underway for him. Kellyan Bocasta, that's how we know his name, the 14-year-old boy there. He is with his mum. Also, I've got to say he's an aspiring drill rapper known as Gripper. His mum reckons that he was groomed by what she calls drug gangsters. She says that she tried very, very hard to stop it, wasn't able to. I was going to play a clip of the mum there. She's absolutely devastated, as any mum would be. But I think what I'll do is I'll just get straight into the debate here because we've got too many grieving mothers in this country now. What do you think is the answer to all of this, Charlie Downs?
Well, I mean, the rate of knife crime and murders and homicides and rapes and just terrible crimes that go often unsolved and uninvestigated by the Metropolitan Police in London under the reign of that contemptible individual, Sadiq Khan, is staggering. You know, it didn't used to be this way. London used to be a reasonably safe, clean, pleasant city, but now it's descended into this kind of dystopian hellscape that we see before us, where 14-year-old children can't even walk the streets without fear of being stabbed to death. Now, I think it is probably worth noting that, you know, let's just be frank about this. The drill music community is it's a community that kind of celebrates and idolises what I would call very degenerate ideas, degenerate culture, celebrates drug use, crime, and holds that up as something like an ideal. So I think that it comes, you know, this kind of thing comes with the territory, which is not to say that what's happened to this child is not a tragedy. Of course it is. I think it's beyond belief that we live in Britain in 2025, in the 21st century. You know, we live in a country where this kind of thing goes on, and it's not just a once-in-a-while thing. This happens on a weekly basis at this point. I think it's just despicable. And I think a large reason for this kind of thing happening is just the way in which the Metropolitan Police, again, run by Sadiq Khan, he is where the buck stops, the way that it just doesn't seem to be interested in stopping crimes in the city. And also the way in which our justice system seems to operate from this very progressive perspective where what's held up as the ideal is rehabilitation. But actually, I think there needs to be a recognition of the fact that that style of justice just simply doesn't work, and that the best kind of rehabilitation, the best strategy for rehabilitation is harsh punishment, because that's what these criminally minded individuals actually respond to. You can't hug people out of stabbing people to death. You have to make their lives hell.
I also do want to note as well that the 14-year-old that was very tragically killed, I mean, because whatever, we all, you know, we'll have this debate, but whatever you think, whatever you don't think, it is tragic that a 14-year-old has been killed in this way. But I do also want to note that that 14-year-old was also due in court imminently, for he was accused of carrying a machete himself. He was charged with possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. Judita De Silva, what do you make to all this?
I think it's kind of an amalgamation of issues, because at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's a young boy. We've seen the humanity of him by looking at his mother being interviewed. This was a woman who tried to save him, but she felt that she'd lost him to gang culture. And I think that what's happening in the UK, it's not new. It's been happening for decades. And what it is a byproduct of American rap culture. But what you're beginning to see in modern times, particularly with social media, is that older rappers are beginning to bring honesty into the discourse around this kind of music, when they say, what we rap about is not what we actually do. But unfortunately, when you have young people who aren't academically motivated or professionally motivated or have any prospects beyond how can I make a quick buck using the power of the internet, they think that if I live what these rappers have been purporting to live, then I will get the kind of street cred that will make me famous and will make me rich. But you have to kind of have a discourse between the generations that have passed and the generations that exist now to let them know that living that truth isn't actually a thing, and it's going to end you up in situations like this 14-year-old, because it's someone who is ill-advised trying to live a life they do not understand because they do not have options.
Well, this kid, the 14-year-old that was killed, I think that was just a clip of him a second ago waving his wadges of cash, saying that he'd had a, quote, hard day's work. It was only a couple of weeks ago that one of his mates, who I think was about 14 or 15, he'd been killed.
But when you look at how it happens, a lot of them, part of the grooming process is that seduction of quick money, because he's probably done something which they've discussed about, which could have led to his stabbing, which was an initiation. And because of that, you get given a wad of cash by someone who ranks higher in the gang. And now you feel, I concretely have a source of income that makes me earn even more than my mother earns. So your mother can't tell you anything. She's lost that line of discipline. So that's when a parent really does lose their child to gangs, because they're answerable to something they respect more, which is money and clout, which they get access to by these violent criminals.
Where's the dads in some of this? I can't help but notice it always seems to be the mums absolutely distraught, devastated, you know, losing their sons and all the rest of it. Where's the fathers?
Some of the fathers used to be gang members themselves and are either in prison or have passed away by violent means themselves, or you don't know what the personal circumstances are. If you're talking about a second-generation immigrant, one parent might have stayed in their birth country and one parent came here to build a better life. Every single story is different, and you have to take it on an individual case basis. But for this, it's not just, for instance, it's not just black teens, it's not just Asian teens, it's not just white teens. It's a general idea of youth culture around the internet, because they believe that that's where a lifestyle can be built, as opposed to concrete means like getting a job or going to school.
What do you make to it at home? It's very depressing, isn't it? It is just so depressing. Have you got a child that's been out of control, that you've really struggled? Because on the other hand, we have talked about what many people call grooming gangs. On another side of a fence where it's been young girls that have been apparently getting groomed. It's just the whole thing is an absolute mess. What about this drill music stuff? Should you be able to rap about all this stuff with your knives and your guns and all the rest of it? Or am I just turning into a bit of an old fuddy-duddy? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts on all of that. After the break, do you have sympathy when you've seen these houses absolutely turn to ash over in America? I realise that many people don't. Are you one of them? I'll see you in 2.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
TikTok chefs, Instagram chefs, that they put children off or young people off of cooking because it's so expertly done they can't do it. No, my young lad, he's 17, he is amazing in the kitchen. Oh, he is. He's amazing in the kitchen. And he gets it all off TikTok. He comes down, he can put burgers, wraps, stews, curries, sauces, and the smells in the kitchen. I said, where'd you get these? Oh, just TikTok, I'm trying it out. And it's just amazing the things that he can conjure up. So for some people, it might be... it's an inspiration for him. So they're saying that it's intimidation. For my boy, it's an inspiration. They say it's entertainment. For my boy, it's an infomercial. I watch him doing his stuff. At that stage, I could do baked beans on toast and knock up a salad. That was it. But my boy can do all sorts of stuff.
It makes it accessible as well, doesn't it? Because lots of people say, like, you need an education to be in the kitchen, or you need to go find yourself loads of cookbooks. But you don't.
No.
Go on your phone now.
Well, I mean, like, all the spices, sesame oil. I mean, I'm amazed at the stuff that he does. So it's encouraging. All you just need is a kitchen well-stocked and have a go. And understand that failure is actually the route to learning. I mean, he's made mistakes, he's stuck stuff in the bin, but that young man, I am amazed at some of the stuff he does.
I don't mind cooking at all. It's cleaning up that I have the problem with. Dawn, let's talk about sex.
Can I just say there are things called restaurants, by the way? Just put that one. Oh, my hell, I don't even know where the kitchen is.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Charlie Downs and Jadita De Silva remain. I say good luck to him, says Philip. Why wasn't he pardoned? Of course, he's talking about Donald Trump, but you are quite divided on that one, I can tell you that. Charlie, I mean, there's not a lot of love for drill music out there, I've got to say. If you do like drill music, get in touch and tell me why. I think it's an absolute racket, but then that always makes me feel like I'm getting old. Fred says, I'm a Londoner, and the London I knew when I was growing up and going to school never had this problem. But did it have other problems, though, Fred? That's what I'd ask. Gerald says, Michelle, what we need to do is punish these offenders with their knives. You need harsher, short, sharp shock, you say, as soon as you're caught in a gang, interacting with a gang, with a knife, prison. But where's the prison places, though, Joe? That's what I would ask you. They're too busy filling them up with people that say stuff on social media, aren't they? That is the problem. Anyway, look, the fires in America. We haven't touched on this story all of this week, but so many different fires now. Absolutely rampaged, hasn't it? Across LA, destroying thousands of often very nice, very expensive houses. The death toll there is 10 people. 200,000 people have been put under evacuation orders. Now, while we've been looking and following this story across the days, I've really noticed not a lot of people seem to be full-on sympathetic to the people that have lost their homes in these fires. Where are you on all this, Charlie?
I can understand that, to be honest. I mean,
Why?
I think it's important for us to not be facetious about this because, as you said, 10 people have died, which is tragic and terrible. And the scenes coming out of Los Angeles are like something out of hell. I mean, it's really terrifying imagery. But with that being said, I can't help but feel, as a Christian, that there is an element of Sodom and Gomorrah happening here, and that this is something like a cosmic wrath being inflicted on the place that so many of the bad ideas in the modern world have come from, because it's Californian liberals that gave birth to so much of what's wrong in Western culture today. So much of what is exported from this region of America poisons the minds of people with its ideas and the ideals that it holds up. And so, you know, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I think it would be absolutely despicable to say that it's a good thing. But I can understand where people are coming from when they don't have a lot of sympathy.
I've noticed as well a lot of what I would call out-and-out jealousy by people saying, well, these guys, a lot of them are minted, they've got about 5 houses, who cares if they lose one of them? But, I mean, these are still people's homes, right? Would you want to lose your home and every single possession that you have, your child's bedroom, your child's memory box, all of that kind of stuff? Jadita, where are you?
Yeah, I think it comes from the fracture between the haves and the have-nots. And California is literally this haven of some of the most famous, most wealthy, most entitled people in the world. But at the same time, it's human right now. What you're seeing is elemental, and it comes to the very basis of humanity. People are losing their homes, their livelihoods, their memories, where they've built an entire life for themselves with their children, with their grandchildren. That's something that's deserving of sympathy. But also remember that it's not just rich people that live here. It is everyday people, and they're hurting too. It's also animals who haven't got a chance in hell in this situation. Sympathy has to bleed out to all of them. So, yes, they might be losing a house, and if you're wealthy, you're just losing a house while you have other houses. But some people are truly losing everything. So you shouldn't compartmentalize your sympathy and just understand that this is something that doesn't discriminate against who it affects.
What do you think the root cause of this is, these fires? Because I've seen many people say, you know, what you're seeing is climate change in action. Are you in that camp?
It is climate change in action. I don't know how you can see this and say that this isn't the wrath of nature and say that where does this come from?
I would look at that and say that. I would be one of those people that looks at that and says that. I would look at that and say it's not the wrath of nature per se. I'm sure that is an element of it, but I would say it's the wrath of terrible policies, very poor forest management, very poor water management, decisions that people have
specialists and
made.
advisors have actually said, based on the nature of the terrain where this is happening, all it would take is a small fire and a strong wind. I was in LA 2 days ago and I just got out before things got really bad. And the reason my plane took off about 2 hours late was because the winds were too strong for it to take off, but we managed to. So all it was like the amalgamation of elements coming together, which is what they've said, that you can't fight nature. A small fire with a strong wind in the right direction, and this happens.
So if you know, though, that I would argue, if you know you've got that threat, so none of which I don't dispute any of what you just said, but what I would say is if you know you've you've got that threat, you know you've got the potential for those conditions, then it is an absolute basic requirement of you as the government of California, for example, to make sure that you're managing your forests properly, that you are managing your water infrastructure properly. Many people would argue that those two basic points have failed.
That isn't right, because take somewhere, for instance, like Haiti, that's on fracture lines. For the rest of time, it's going to have to deal with earthquakes because that's where you are geographically located. Where this is geographically located, there isn't an amount of water that can fight this kind of fire. So the only choices you have is you can't move the wildlife because that is their organic habitat. All you can do is cut down how far it spreads and also kind of de-urbanize the areas around it so that not everyone is losing their houses. So now you're saying that you've got a part of California where human beings probably just shouldn't build houses and shouldn't live. That's the only way you can operate against this, because this will happen
so you
because
don't think
nature moves a certain way.
Bad policies have contributed in large part to this.
No.
Do you, Charlie?
Well, I think that whenever there is widespread destruction due to a natural disaster in a first world country that certainly has the means to prevent this kind of thing, like America, I think there has to be some degree of conversation.
There's mitigation, but there's no prevention.
But I remember, well, I say I remember, it was when I was a child, but since then, when Hurricane Katrina happened, right, and the destruction that inflicted on New Orleans, there were people who were saying that actually a lot of the destruction was avoidable, and that it happened because of bad policy. It happened because the preventative measures and the defences against something like that, causing the degree of destruction that it did, just simply weren't there. And so I do tend to believe that, I find it impossible to believe that this couldn't have been prevented, right?
But when you look at New Orleans, with that case of flooding, the complaints they had was the response mechanisms they had in place, why people were left abandoned for so long. When they were in I think it was the Superdrome or the Aerodrome, I can't remember what it was called, they hadn't planned for how to deal with what happens once it happened. Yeah. They can't prevent it from happening. That's what I'm saying here. You can't prevent it. It's how you deal with the aftermath. And dealing with the aftermath is that you just can't have people living in that area.
But it's still policy, and we're still talking about the actual the rules created by the governing classes of these places. Because if you look at the governing class of California, headed up obviously by Gavin Newsom, it seems to be, institutionally left-wing, institutionally progressive, completely given to the kind of climate narrative, and yet still wasn't able to prevent, or as you say, maybe prevent is the wrong framing, but deal with this this tragedy, right? Because just on the climate thing, I sincerely believe that it is the duty of human beings to preserve and maintain the natural environment, because it is a gift. It's something that has been cultivated and created by our ancestors and given to us to be the stewards of. But with that being said, I think that there is a different kind of motivation behind the kind of international climate narrative that we're sold by the various institutions of power, and the goal tends to be an increase in government power.
Well, there you go. Steve says, Michelle, surely these houses are fully insured. What's the problem? One of the big insurance companies, State Farm, it actually did, it refused to renew 69% of the policies in one of these areas last year. And by the way, even if you do have insurance, I don't know if you've ever lost absolutely everything in your life, Steve, but just being able to replace the material possessions doesn't actually necessarily always make up for the disruption, the fear that you would have felt, and everything that you've lost. I don't know, imagine that you've got a kid and you've got one of those, your little growth chart things that you put on the wall where you scribble the height. You've got all your memories in your home. No amount of money can replace that and those things, can it? Get in touch and let me know your thoughts on that one. Coming up after the break, we touched on him earlier on, Elon Musk. Humza Yousaf has called him the world's most dangerous man. He's also said a lot of other stuff too. Let's look at that after the break.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures falling sharply out there at the moment, leading to a very frosty start to the weekend. Many of us will have a dry weekend thanks to high pressure. But although the pressure's high, the temperatures are going to be low. Under this high pressure, clear skies and light winds meaning temperatures likely to get to minus double digits, minus teens across parts of northern England and Scotland. Not quite so cold further west. There's a weather front here. It's been bringing a little bit of rain to South Wales, southwest England, and it'll bring a bit more to parts of Northern Ireland through the night. But it also means here temperatures will be lifting, maybe some snow over the hills, but mostly it'll be rain and drizzle. Elsewhere it's dry. Fog is going to thicken up through the night. The Welsh Marches across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia, Lincolnshire too. So be aware of that because it could last for much of the day. Not as cold in the morning across the southwest and southwest Wales. Outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland. Dull, damp, drizzly start here, but it should turn brighter through the day because this rain's going to creep into western Scotland. Again, here, not as cold first thing in the morning, but where there's snow lying on the ground over the Cairngorms, we could be as low as minus 15 or minus 16 Celsius. So a cold start. Potentially a little icy in places. The fog is likely to stick over parts of the Midlands and East Anglia, but it will be very patchy in nature. The rain also fairly patchy in nature as it trickles towards western Scotland, North Wales and northwest England. As I said, it'll turn a bit brighter in Northern Ireland. Many places fine and sunny. Temperatures, though, still struggling in the east. 2 or 3 degrees. Where the fog sticks, we probably won't get above freezing. And temperatures will be back down below freezing across much of England and Wales Sunday morning. Again, some dense patches of fog around. Bit of a switch, though, for the northwest. A more active weather front coming in here, bringing a bit more rain and a strengthening wind. And look at where the wind's coming from now. The south, bringing milder air, but it'll still be pretty cold across the south.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in Greater Manchester on the M60. A lane's been closed on the anti-clockwise exit, the junction 18 where it meets the M66 at Mr Island, of course, where a car's broken down. On the M6 in the West Midlands, 2 lanes are closed off northbound just after junction 6, the Spaghetti Junction. Birmingham exit, of course, at the scene of an accident. In Nottinghamshire, east of Newark-on-Trent, the A17 remains shut eastbound between Coddington and Leadenham for accident investigation work. It's also shut westbound as well at Leadenham. And in West London at Ladbroke Grove, the A404, the Harrow Road, has been shut. Emergency services are dealing with an incident between 3rd and 5th Avenue. And in East Sussex, heading into Brighton City Centre, the A23, the Beaconsfield Road, remains shut southbound off Preston Circus. A fire broke out of the building nearby and the whole area is cordoned off, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs and Kurt till 7 o'clock tonight. If you're just joining us, good evening to you. Alongside me, Charlie Downs, the political commentator, and Judita De Silva, the broadcaster and commentator alongside me. Dave, I've just told Judita in the break your comment to her saying you appreciated Judita's feedback when it came to the gangs. You said you're going to pay close attention to what she says going forward. What was your response, Judita?
I said, let's enjoy this moment we're having, Dave. You're probably going to hate everything I say next until your remote control of the TV.
Stay tuned, Dave, stay tuned. One of my viewers, I've just lost you. I was desperate to read it out. You said, Michelle, you only ever read out views that you agree with or that share your sentiment. That is certainly not true, I can assure you of that. But you didn't even tell me what your view was, so I couldn't include it. One of my viewers has got in touch saying, Michelle, coming back to the issue about the gangland culture, what you feel is military service run by veterans. You say that's got a double benefit. It would engage veterans, keep many of those busy and occupied if they're currently not, and it would also sort out these young kids. What do you reckon to that? Are you a veteran? Would you want to get lumbered with having to deal with wayward kids? I'm not sure I would. And I've got to say, so many of you getting in touch and saying that when it comes to the fires, your sympathies lie with all the animals and all the wildlife that was affected. There you go. Humza Yousaf, he has been speaking out today about Elon Musk. Take a listen.
Elon Musk needs to be stopped. This isn't just about one tweet or one individual. It's about a pattern that we are seeing globally. Powerful individuals with massive platforms are amplifying harmful rhetoric. They're normalizing prejudice, and all to create division through the spread of disinformation. Last summer, after he fanned the flames of racial intolerance here in the UK, I warned that Elon Musk was one of the most dangerous men on the planet.
I mean, what is going on with people these days? Why can't they just say what they think? Why do they have to create these weird... Did you see, if you were listening onto the radio, you won't know what I'm talking about. There's all these different camera angles. We're looking at Humza front on, then we're zooming in, then we're peering over the top of a laptop screen. It's all very, very odd. And by the way, when it comes to Humza Yousaf, when he talks about basically racial divisions and focusing on skin colours and all the rest of it, many people remember him because of this.
My portfolio alone, the Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The Head of the Law Society, white.
I've got to say, it did actually go on and on and on and on, but for time reasons, I thought you'd have got the gist by now. I do have to obviously state the obvious that Scotland is about 96% white. Anyway, this issue about Elon Musk, what do you think to what Humza Yousaf is saying there? The most dangerous man in the world.
Well, I mean, he is being monitored by the Home Office's Homeland Security Group, as well as a number of other people that he's engaged with. And I've got to say that I might be one of them, because he retweeted and followed me on Twitter the other day, which was an extremely bizarre experience. But I think that he has done, broadly speaking, a good, because he has brought back into the public consciousness the issue of the Islamic rape gangs that have been plaguing this country since the 1970s. It's a huge problem. It is a scar upon this nation that I don't think we've even begun to see the true consequences of. I think that it is the darkest period in our history, certainly since the Second World War and probably before that. And I think that it's just astonishing. With that being said, I'm uneasy and I am disturbed by the number of people that are just welcoming what really amounts to foreign influence into our politics, because Elon Musk is a brilliant man, but he's very new to politics. And some of the things that he has said, for example, about Tommy Robinson, I think have indicated a fundamental misunderstanding of the political situation in Britain. Because in America, Tommy Robinson is viewed basically as a right-wing commentator. He's invited onto Jordan Peterson's podcast, for example, whereas in Britain, he, through media narratives and through actually government narratives, he has been made into a figure that represents the furthest right position in British politics. Now, I think that the phenomenon that Tommy Robinson represents, which is to say working class anger around the consequences of mass migration, and in particular the importation of Islamic culture into Britain, is not going to go away, all the while it's left unaddressed. And actually, I think that we're going to start to see the emergence of figures who make Tommy Robinson look like Mr. Rogers, right? Because this issue is being suppressed actively by our government. And until we are ready to have a frank and honest conversation about it, and about the incompatibility of certain ideas and cultures with our country and our people, it's only going to get worse.
Judita De Silva?
First of all, you have to look at it from different angles. Looking at it from the Elon Musk angle is it's fascinating the amount of time, influence, power and attention that he's wielding within the UK. What people have to understand about an Elon Musk character is that the UK is not something he's emotionally invested in. It's a means to an end, and that's when you now have to shift focus to the global landscape. In the coalition of what is the axis of North Korea, China and Russia, it is one of the biggest platforms for paranoia that's driving Donald Trump, because we're moving into a geopolitical landscape where America is no longer the superpower it used to be. So right now, the UK, since its Brexit, has become a kind of rogue element that is a very beneficial pawn to someone who's trying to recalibrate the power structure when looking at what the kind of threat that China and Russia pose. That is what the interest is when you look at Trump and Elon Musk. And when you look at the dynamic throughout history, whether it is, I don't know, Castro, Mussolini, Stalin, there is always a dynamic. There is a leader who has the power. There is the conciliary, which is Elon Musk, and they need an enforcer. In their endeavours towards Europe and the UK, whether it's going to be Nigel Farage, whether it's going to be Tommy Robinson, they're just kicking the tires on who's the right personality that has enough influence and is malleable enough to be that enforcer. Because if they gain control of a party like Reform UK, where essentially it's a company where the majority shareholder is Nigel Farage, control Nigel Farage, you control a political party and you control politics, because it's got the populist votes. You have to give them that. So understand what the players are and what they're doing. So now when you get to Humza Yousaf making this video, the points he's making are valid. The execution is poor, and it's not pointed because you're not coming from a place where you've presented yourself as a character that is all embracing of prejudice towards anyone. Have you spoke up about anti-Semitism? Have you spoke up when they were attacking Jess Phillips? Have you spoken up when there was prejudice against black people? But when it is Islamists, you're right there making a video. So people think that you only speak up and use your platform when it affects you. That's not the makings of a great leader who is truly all embracing. And that's the issue that people who even back the Muslim community have a problem with, where is your solidarity when it's others, but you want solidarity when it's you? You have to be shown to be integrating, to be cooperative, to actually have this willingness to operate as a unified force with other people who are not within the Muslim community. Then they feel that when they stand up for you, they're also standing for themselves inadvertently.
It's a very interesting perspective, actually. I want to go back to something you just said, Judita, about America's influence, because I'm of the belief that the United Kingdom has essentially been a vassal state to the United States since the end of the Second World War, since the collapse of our own empire. Because America is an empire. America is a global empire, although it doesn't call itself such, which is actually quite an interesting strategy, I think. But we don't, in Britain, determine our own foreign policy. We just follow what America tells us to do, which is an indication that we are a vassal state. And so I think that more American influence is not really what we need. And I think in the long term, it's not in our national interest to have more American influence. That's not to say that in the short term, assistance from figures like Trump and Musk on some of the problems that we're facing is not desirable, because again, I do think that it is an unalloyed good that Musk has brought back to the public consciousness, the issue of the rape gangs. But with that being said, we can't just buy into American influence in British politics, hook, line and sinker, because I think that that's dangerous.
But even that point you made about Elon Musk, it's coincidental. Elon Musk is not sitting around thinking, I care so much about the plight of women and girls.
How do you know what he's sitting around thinking?
Look at his record about what he's invested in, what he cares about, what he gets on his soapbox on. Jess Phillips has an entire career.
What do you know about what he invests in privately? Because a lot of people do charitable good and they don't publicly shout about it.
Elon Musk is a public figure with a proclivity for vanity. When he does stuff, he shows off about it. If he really was somebody who had been helping women and girls and was attacking Jess Phillips, you know he would have put his record out there for everyone to know about it.
But he addressed this, though, didn't he? Because he basically said he's passionate about this issue because his grandma, I think it was his grandma, was essentially born in, I think it was Liverpool. And what he was saying is that he feels like the working class girls of Britain have been woefully betrayed. I don't agree with, calling people like witches and all. I don't really,
But don't you think it's ironic? You're speaking up for women being treated badly while treating a woman badly. That just kind of is the paradox. It's amusing to me. But my thing is, it's like, I agree that, like they say, a broken clock is right twice a day. Him using his influence to happen to talk about this issue has actually helped victims that really need it, because the victims themselves, all they want is the attention they deserve, the support they deserve.
And
people
justice,
investing in,
most importantly.
and whoever is the voice. If Satan had put out that tweet and it brought attention, they take the attention and send Satan back to hell.
No, but everyone,
all they care about is that people make changes.
You're missing a bit of a step here, because the reason this has all come into the public domain again now is primarily because of the fact that Oldham Council, they had a vote. They basically went to the Home Office and requested multiple times that the government, the Home Office, helps look into and do an inquiry as to what's been going on in Oldham. First and foremost, it took Jess Phillips quite some time to even respond to that. So they had to ask multiple times. And that is what then caused, the fury of many people. That's what then pricked the attention of the likes of Elon Musk. The fact that the person responsible for women and girls' safety, didn't even respond to survivor-led requests for the government to help with an inquiry.
That point, I completely agree that you dropped the ball in wasting time. But when you got to the response is valid. This is a lady who
No, you didn't drop the ball and waste time. You ignored it.
Once she responded, when you look...
but she ignored it.
No, but she said that she hadn't had a chance to respond yet, and when she did respond...
But I thought your priority was women and girls being safe. So if you've got one council repeatedly asking you, can you help us with this matter?
No, sometimes things fall through the cracks. If you've been in government for 6 months and you're trying to get your handle on something that has been pre-established for 14 years, you've got to be willing to say that maybe the workload is such that you drop the ball on certain things.
But you don't think she should be exempt from criticism because she's a woman, though, do you?
No, you should be criticised on the work that you do. That's why I said, when you look at her response, she said the reason she said no to the inquiry is that they want an inquiry on a national level. Having product tested, doing it at the local level, she said it's more effective and more effective quicker. The problem I have with what has happened with Jess Phillips is that you should have sat down with these victims by now and had a conversation directly with them, because what you've got is too many external forces getting involved in the conversation.
Well, indeed, and we all know the way that vote played out, don't we, the other night. Many of you have been in touch with me saying you're absolutely furious, by the way, that the likes of Starmer, he whipped his MPs into a frenzy, saying that you had to vote against this national inquiry. But when you look at the likes of Starmer, Lammy, Rayner, they didn't even vote. Many of you lot are quite angry about that. Look, lots to talk about after the break. Dewberry Tavern opens. No, I'm not doing Dry January. Reform UK, I want to talk about them.
This Saturday at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood has been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's not too hard to find something a little warmer than the UK. Around the Mediterranean, temperatures are generally in the low teens, but it's not completely dry. A few showers are possible across Cyprus this weekend, so looking fairly wet across southern Italy and Croatia, although that rain will be scooting away by Sunday. Plenty of sunshine across the east and the south coast of Spain, and lots of sunshine for the Canaries. It will be quite breezy in Madeira, quite a lot of cloud likely here over the next few days as well, turning a little colder in Italy.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Got a special treat for you because we can show you this lovely video of a lady running on a beach. So you're not missing much if you're listening on the radio. It is literally a woman in white writing on the beach, writing 2025.
Yes, because that's the year we're in now.
Is it?
Yes,
Wow.
and it's because Meghan Markle returned to Instagram yesterday.
Former royal correspondent for The Sun, Charles Ray, joins us now. Are you inspired to remember the year, Charles?
Oh, Happy New Year to you too as well. I honestly haven't got a clue what she's doing now. You know, I would have thought we should have had the theme tune from Jaws as she was running down to the water there and everything else. They're being quite hypocritical here because they came off social media because they were getting unparalleled abuse. I don't condone at all. It is not right whatsoever. And they've spent the last few years complaining about social media.
We've seen her before with her lifestyle blog, haven't we? Before she met Prince Harry, she was running a successful blog. Do you think she wants to go back to doing that sort of thing?
I think it's possible that that's what she wants to do. I mean, I don't understand how these things work, okay? But all I know is that certain influencers earn an awful lot of money from Instagram and everything else. Now, they're talking about figures. I mean, whether this is true or not, I've something like £790,000 she could earn per post. You know, so it's quite incredible what she can possibly earn out of this. It's interesting, though, Stephen and Ellie, that she's actually switched off all the comments on this one.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Clearly, she doesn't want to have anybody on there saying anything nasty or anything good about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back everyone. Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Charlie Downs and Jadita De Silva remain alongside me. I know it's January and I'm supposed to be doing dry January, but, you know, I'm not very good. What can I say? Dewberry Tavern is open. Cheers to each and every single one of you at home. Cheers to you all, well, to you both in the panel. Cheers, everyone. And a Happy New Year. I tried to do Dewberry Tavern this time last year in January, dry January. I lasted about a week, so I thought, you know what, let's just not mess around today. Bridget, you say, hello from a snowy France. You say, Hamza Youssef should get back on his scooter and keep going. He's a total failure and no one wants to hear his rubbish. Oh, Ian has been in touch saying, Michelle, why would anyone care if they lost a record of a kid's height? In multiple generations' time, they won't even know or care. It's all about now and the present, not the future or the past. Well, I don't know, Ian, I don't even have a thing on my wall about my kid's height, but these things are very precious to people. My point was, even if you don't agree with my height chart thing, to lose all of your memories, everything. I don't know where you're sitting right now. Wherever you're sitting, look around you. Think about all the stuff you got stashed in your loft or your cupboard or under your bed or whatever it is, anything that's precious to you. If you lost literally everything other than the shoes and the clothes that you were stood up in, would it bother you? You know, in return for here's a little bit of money? I don't know. Maybe I'm just a bit more sentimental. Anyway, look, Nigel Farage, they've got a Reform UK have got a conference tonight. It caught my eye, though, that there was quite a big poll recently that predicted that the party would win 72 seats if there was a general election held tomorrow. I always find these polls quite interesting because if my auntie had wheels, she'd be a bus, but she ain't got wheels and she ain't a bus, and there's not a general election tomorrow. But anyway, Charlie, where are you on this?
Well, on the issue of polling, I think that something that is not said enough is that polling does not exist to inform the public of what public opinion is. It exists to shape public opinion. And so I think that this poll, I mean, you know, I am an occasionally critical supporter of Reform UK, and I think that this poll is very, very encouraging because it does represent a fundamental rejection of the kind of governing order that we've had in this country since at least 1997, because there's really no distinction between the Conservative and Labour parties in their style of governance and the kind of, the economic philosophy, the kind of general governing philosophy that both parties represent. It's just indistinguishable, right? And I think that it's no surprise that Reform are doing so well in the face of that. What I would say is that I think that, you know, the momentum in British politics is clearly behind Reform UK. But with that being said, they now need to start putting out some real substance, right? What are they actually going to do when they win all of these seats, right? Because I have no doubt at the next general election, unless something radical happens, I think that they are going to win a hell of a lot of seats. And so, you know, dozens, maybe hundreds. And so between now and then, we really do need to see a more codified, a more clear, precise, specific policy platform for them. Because I think a lot of people who are supporters of the party, like myself, we want to see some actual meat now.
Some actual meat. Do you want to see actual meat from Reform UK, and do you feel optimistic and enthusiastic that you'll get it? Jadita, where are you?
What I find is that Reform is appealing to the populist vote, and a lot of the time populism is driven quite vehemently by emotion. And while you're capitalising on an emotion that's very real and very tangible at this point in British history, you have to also remember all the people that are very pro-reform. Remind yourselves why you're pro-reform. What was it that you had an issue with the Tories or with Labour?
How long are you got? How long you can ask people what issues they have with Reform and Labour. I'll finish in 8 minutes. Crikey.
Distilling it down is you make promises you don't keep. So look at the promises reform or their pledges and ask them how they're going to deliver. Because at the end of the day, what politics boils down to is money. To deliver this thing is money. So how, for all the things they're pledging that they will fix, they will do better, how will reform pay for what they're going to deliver, and how will they actually put it into action? Because you will see that you probably can face the same criticism they're levelling at Labour right now.
Yes, well, this is interesting what you bring up about populism, because I actually think that populism is the position of the outsider. Populism is the position of the insurgent, and it's more of a style than it is an actual position, right? Because populism in and of itself doesn't contain a great deal of political or philosophical content.
It's just being anti, really.
Exactly. And so what we saw, for example, with Trump in 2016, he campaigned as a populist, entered government and sought to govern as a populist. And what that meant was that the entire machinery of the managerial state didn't do what he told them to do, because he was trying to govern as a populist. What you need to do is become a party of government, a leadership as opposed to populism. And I hope that Reform are aware of the fact that when they win all these seats, possibly a majority at the next general election, they are prepared to actually clear out the civil service and actually get some stuff done.
Well, one of the things that caught my eye, Nigel Farage actually raised this. Look at this tweet, everyone. The Daily Mirror, the Sunday Mirror, have gone to a Spotted in Clacton group and said, "Hi, hope you all don't mind me posting on here. I'm a reporter with the Sunday Mirror newspaper looking to speak to Clacton constituents who have contacted Farage but not had a response, or anyone else who feels let down by Farage's leadership. If this is you or someone that you know, here's how you can reach me. Many thanks in advance." Now, listen, I think it's admirable from the Sunday Mirror to want to hear the experiences of Nigel Farage's constituents. But hold on a minute, why are you fishing just for the negative ones? Why don't you just ask any constituents in Clacton, what's been your experience of Farage? Let the good come, let the bad come, make your decision for yourself. But oh no, can't have that, can you? You've got to be fishing in the pool of the bad. What do you think to that? I'll let you ponder it over the weekend. Judita, thank you for your time. Charlie, thank you for yours. Thank you to you. Have a fantastic weekend. Weather next. I'll see you on Monday night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A very good evening to you. Temperatures falling sharply out there at the moment, leading to a very frosty start to the weekend. Many of us will have a dry weekend thanks to high pressure. But although the pressure's high, the temperatures are going to be low. Under this high pressure, clear skies and light winds, meaning temperatures likely to get to minus double digits, minus teens across parts of northern England and Scotland. Not quite so cold further west. There's a weather front here. It's been bringing a little bit of rain to South Wales, southwest England, and it'll bring a bit more to parts of Northern Ireland through the night. But it also means here temperatures will be lifting, maybe some snow over the hills, but mostly it'll be rain and drizzle. Elsewhere it's dry. Fog is going to thicken up through the night. The Welsh Marches across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia, Lincolnshire too. So be aware of that because it could last for much of the day. Not as cold in the morning across the southwest and southwest Wales. Outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland. Dull, damp, drizzly start here, but it should turn brighter through the day because this rain's going to creep into western Scotland. Again, here, not as cold first thing in the morning, but where there's snow lying on the ground over the Cairngorms, we could be as low as minus 15 or minus 16 Celsius. So a cold start. Potentially a little icy in places. The fog is likely to stick over parts of the Midlands and East Anglia, but it will be very patchy in nature. The rain also fairly patchy in nature as it trickles towards western Scotland, North Wales and northwest England. As I said, it'll turn a bit brighter in Northern Ireland. Many places fine and sunny. Temperatures, though, still struggling in the east. 2 or 3 degrees. Where the fog sticks, we probably won't get above freezing. And temperatures will be back down below freezing across much of England and Wales Sunday morning. Again, some dense patches of fog around. Bit of a switch, though, for the northwest. A more active weather front coming in here, bringing a bit more rain and a strengthening wind. And look at where the wind's coming from now. The south, bringing milder air, but it'll still be pretty cold across the south.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of
the latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are long queues heading north up the M6 through the West Midlands tonight after an earlier crash that happened just after the Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham exit, of course, Junction 6. All lanes are back open, but it's still queuing back towards Castle Bromwich and the other way back towards the M5. On the western stretch of the M25, the motorway is partly blocked clockwise from Junction 16 to 17. Just north of the M40, there's an accident just after you come off the Chalfont Viaduct. And in Wiltshire, to the south of Salisbury, the A338 has been closed between Downton and Charlton All Saints. Recovery works underway following a multi-vehicle collision. And in East Sussex, heading into Brighton city centre, the A23, the Beaconsfield Road, shuts southbound off Preston Circus after a fire broke out in a building, causing long queues in the area. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
£50,000 in tax-free cash is like having over £4,000 each month to play with for a whole year. And it could be yours in the biggest Great British giveaway so far. That could be a holiday each month, your mortgage covered, or just the ability to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
I think the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to